Yoga and faith. This is an interesting topic because, on the one hand, yoga does not ask us to believe in anything. Actually, yoga almost demands that we go beyond our beliefs. That's the aim, that we can experience reality as it is, unimpeded by the accumulated conditionings that ordinarily kind of tint our perception of reality. In yoga, it's all about inquiry. It doesn't give us the answer. Yoga is very practical. It recognizes there is no the answer. As human beings, we do feel a certain attraction to things that offer us an easy solution. Oh, just do this and then that's it. Great. But reality is more complex than that, more nuanced than that. And yoga is based on the observation of reality in nature. So there is no definitive answer. Rather, the way of yoga is one that involves nuance, that involves complexity and adaptability. Yoga recognizes that the appropriate response depends on the particular situation. In yoga, like in all of the traditional schools of Indian arts and science and knowledge, they all recognize in existence, anything and everything can be poison. Anything and everything can be medicine. It all depends on the situation, on the constitution, and on the dose. So, believing in something isn't going to cut it. It's not going to work. But on the other hand, one of the foundational qualities that Patanjali, the sage who gave us the Yoga Sutra, that he says is absolutely essential and foundational for the practice of yoga, is a quality that in translation is often represented by the English word, or its equivalent in other languages, faith. You've got to have faith. However, this faith might not mean what faith initially triggers when you hear it. So when one person hears faith, they might think about religion. When another person hears the word faith, they might think about something that's trustworthy or reliable. Somebody else might think of George Michael, whatever. The English word faith is not a complete representation of the Sanskrit word that it is standing in for in this context, where it is representing this foundational quality that we need in order to cultivate and develop yoga within us. The word that Patanjali uses in the original Sanskrit text is Shraddha. Shraddha. Now, faith, or its equivalent in another language, is not an inaccurate representation or translation of this term. It's just an incomplete one. Shraddha reaches in many directions that reach beyond what the word faith is able to reach to. Shraddha is also a very particular type of faith. Now, sometimes people think that faith means believing in something that we know is not true, or it's a way of conveniently not having to think about things that we don't understand. But Shraddha is nothing like that. Shraddha is the faith, or the confidence, or the conviction that comes from exploring something in the reality of our own experience, in the laboratory or the arena of our own lives, our own lived experience. The idea is, once we put things to the test in the realm of our own experience, then we start to have some confidence in them. One way that this Shraddha has been represented by a contemporary teacher, Eric Schiffman, he's from California, I think, or that's where he's based recently, is as self-trust. And Eric Schiffman says self-trust is the advanced practice. Now, when he says this, I understand that this is basically a very, I would say, very helpful, useful interpretation of this foundational idea in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. The basics will take you to the advanced practice. Yoga, sometimes people get carried away with this idea, oh, it's about ascending, or it's about rising. But the idea is, that may be true, but however high we ascend or rise, we have to root back down, we have to integrate that experience. Now let's say, for example, we have an experience that helps us feel a bit better in our own skin. This is likely to then bolster our faith, bolster our self-trust. If we start doing things that make us feel better, that help us feel more at home in our own skin, our self-trust is going to deepen. And so the idea is, when we start practicing yoga, when we start inviting cohesion, integration, balance and harmony, we're actually, when we start asking for those things, cultivating those things, we're showing to ourselves that we want to, or we are ready to remove those tendencies within us that would chain us to the ways of fragmentation and partiality, because we want to come to congruence. So when we start making an honest, sincere effort to integrate, to bring ourselves into balance, it's likely that we will pull to the surface tendencies we may have been harboring that would get in the way of that sustained well-being or that sustained harmony. However, once those things come to the surface, we are empowered. And once we've seen them, we can do something about them. We can respond to them in a different way, rather than just react in a habitual way. Now, let's say we recognize that we have a certain tendency and it's no longer serving us. We know we want to leave it behind. However, the force of habit is strong. We find ourselves in a situation in which the force of habit tells us to do the old thing that deep down we know we no longer want to do. Another force is saying, no, wait a minute, stop, there is another way. That requires a courageous effort. But if we make that courageous effort, what happens to our shraddha, our self-trust, that faith in ourselves? It grows stronger. So this is what we need to cultivate to practice yoga. How do we do it? One way is by making promises to ourselves that we can keep. By aligning or bringing into attunement our thought, our word and our action. Now when our thought, word and action are all aligned, how does it feel? It feels pretty fantastic. So it's a self-validating, self-propelling practice. When we make that sincere effort to bring ourselves into cohesion, it is its own reward. So our self-trust, our faith in ourselves gets bolstered. But this is something we can practice. So we can practice by making commitments to ourselves and others that we know we have a realistic chance of honoring. So we have to be careful. Let's not overcommit. Let's say, for example, you discover some new yoga technique and you find, oh, this is really helpful. Like, let's say you go and learn to meditate while you're on retreat. And on retreat there's plenty of time because you kind of left aside everything else to privilege this opportunity to look at how you treat yourself day to day and invite some new awareness of ways you can treat yourself better and support yourself better in the day to day. While you're on retreat, that meditation, you love it. So you think, okay, when I go home, that's it. 1 hour every morning, 1 hour every night. Now, for some people that might be realistic, but generally speaking, I would suggest that to go from 0 hours in the day dedicated to meditation to all of a sudden 2 hours a day dedicated to this new practice might be a bit of an unrealistic leap. Even if we have the intention or the idea that it would be nice to meditate 2 hours during the day, how about starting by saying something like, okay, well, I'd like to meditate for an hour in the morning, an hour in the evening, but maybe that's a bit of a, not sure I can keep to that. But what I can be sure I can keep to is that for the next 90 days, every morning, I will meditate for 10 minutes. Maybe I'll meditate for 20 or 30 or 40 minutes or 15 minutes. But I know I can keep to that 10 minutes. And then in the evening, well, it's tricky at home with the kids and getting everything ready. But what I know I can do is before I have my lunch, I can take a 5-minute breathing break and watch my breath for 5 minutes. And the same in the evening, before we share that meal, I can do another of those little 5-minute meditations. So let me commit. I'm going to do 90 days, and every morning I will meditate for 10 minutes, and I will take these 2 other 5-minute breathing meditation breaks. Perhaps I will meditate much longer, but I'm going to keep that promise to myself for 90 days. And if I do, what happens to my self-trust? It gets stronger. Then, after 90 days, if I've noticed that really it's realistic for me to commit to 20 minutes in the morning and another 20 minutes in the evening, then I can commit to that for the next month or 3 months. And I may again do more. That's great. But as one of my friends says, trust or faith is much easier to gain than to regain or recover. So let's be realistic. Yoga's always pragmatic, down to earth. Let's set ourselves up for success. So in order to cultivate this deepening self-trust, we can start making promises to ourselves that we want to keep and that we have a realistic chance of keeping. So taking a realistic step in the direction that our body and our mind and our senses can all agree on. And that's a great way to deepen the type of self-trust that can help us in the practice of yoga, in the practice of cultivating that deeper integration, balance and harmony. Thank you.